one of the most overlooked or maybe most underutilized tool that landlords have is to inspect the property at large and the individual units themselves that are being rented. So in this video, I'm going to go over some of the things that landlords can do to be prudent in maintaining their property and enforcing the terms of the lease as it pertains to the tenants and their responsibilities for the premises. My name is Sasha Struthers. I'm an attorney in Los Angeles, and I do a lot of videos about property management and landlording. So I'm just going to get right into it. When you lease, whether it's a house or an apartment, one thing that's typically in a lease or should be in a lease is the landlord's reservation for their right to inspect the premises. Leases typically allow for that. I've seen where they're kind of silent to it, but it's kind of understood. My rule of thumb is to, in the lease, write that you have, a right to inspect the premises quarterly. If your lease doesn't say that, I have a lease, I will link it below, that you can purchase. That is landlord friendly, and that is one of the provisions in the lease. The reason for it being quarterly is when you move a tenant in, tenants tend to be on their best behavior when they first move in. And landlords have the habit of having a tenant move in and then kind of like just letting it be. When you inspect it quarterly, one, if you have it in the lease, then puts the tenant on notice that's going to happen. And two, when you actually follow through and inspect units quarterly, what it ends up doing is it alerts the tenant that you in fact are going to enforce the lease and that they do have responsibilities that you expect them to adhere to. Another benefit of checking it quarterly is that you can see if there's anything wrong. You can check for very obvious defects, damage to the unit, damage to appliances, hardware, walls. You can check if things are leaking that maybe weren't leaking when they moved in. You can make sure that tenants are properly venting, usually like the bathroom, if there's a laundry area, to prevent the buildup of moisture, which tends to cause mold. There's a lot of things that you can check that once you look and see, for instance, if you lease the apartment has carpeting or new flooring and then you check and it's damaged and it wasn't damaged, when they moved in, then you can immediately put the tenant on alert that one, it's their responsibility and either they will immediately address it or you can repair it and bill it to them. Whatever way you enforce the lease, it's important when you inspect it and then you hold the tenant responsible, it does signal that you're going to hold them responsible, and they will probably after the first quarterly inspection change what they're doing or be more mindful of what they're doing in the apartment. I've seen so many landlords put a lot of money into rehabbing units, making them look great, making them really market friendly. Then they have a tenant come in and then the tenant maybe moves out in a year or a few years, and all of the hard work and money that they poured into this rehabbed unit, they have to then report into it again because the tenant damaged the unit or didn't take care of it, and the owner just kind of let it be and never checked. Another thing is it's a good practice just in general to check the major systems on the property. So that would be like the roof, the electrical system, the plumbing system, and then any HVAC systems or mechanical systems. If you don't have AC, most apartments have usually some sort of heater. It's really good to check those. Typically have them checked by a licensed professional who's licensed in one of those trades. And it would be even more prudent to get 2 or 3 licensed vendors to come out. And if they charge you, a fee for the call, that's up to you to pay it or not. But it's good to get, 2 or 3 people to come and look at it. Because if 3 people have drastically different quotes, then maybe you'll have an idea as someone, one vendor might be a little more advantageous than the other. If you get, 2 or 3 reports that say kind of the same thing, then you might have, an indication that something serious is going on and should be addressed. Another thing is it's much easier to address things before they are nightmares. So if, let's say, you have someone check and they go, hey, the roof is compromised in these certain areas, it's good to fix them when it's not raining than to wait for it to rain and then it cause a lot more problems. Another reason why you want to check, major systems like the electrical system, the plumbing system, is that you want to be able to fix things when they're not a huge inconvenience to the tenant. it is really exhausting for you, the landlord, and the tenant to have the tenant temporarily move out, deal with rent credits, all these problems that arise when a huge problem occurs from deferred maintenance. A good example is landlords should do, a cleaning of the main line at least once a year. That helps simply because no matter how many times you warn people or have rules, things will always end up in the main line. I don't know. The amount of baby wipes that have been recovered from main lines is like way too many. So if you're more proactive in getting those things checked, then you tend to find out problems before they become trash can fires. Another thing is address repairs promptly. So some things are not inherent like emergencies. Don't wait a month to fix things. Don't wait longer than is really necessary. Stay on top of, as soon as you get a maintenance request, try to get it resolved as soon as possible. Try to wait no longer than a week if it's, it's something that can wait a day or two. But that will save face with the tenants. When they see that you're proactive about making repairs, then it tends to make them feel more at ease and doesn't aggravate them. It also just prevents the repair from getting worse or being exasperated. And then another thing, if it's in the unit, it gives you or your handyman the chance to kind of do a glance around and see if there's any other problems in the unit that could be addressed before those become, again, maintenance problems. Being prudent just about repairs is kind of the one sticking point that I think tenants have the most complaints about, is like, I made a repair request, no one got back to me. And that's what tends to drive tenants pretty much mad, or drive them to either a housing authority or an attorney to complain. And my last point to make is get familiar with local laws. If you're in a rent-controlled area, like for instance LA City, they do inspections every couple of years. They have a very set list of things that they check for. Common things that they check for is that there's no obvious defects, like there's no chipped floors, the handrails aren't loose, hardware is in good condition, the glazing on like sinks and tubs are good, that there's no need for reglazing, smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors are working, things like that. You can make a simple checklist and you can check those periodically. If you get a notice of some sort of inspection, you can go through each one of the units in advance of the inspection, make sure everything looks good before that. But being familiar with the local laws, and especially with any sort of inspecting agency and what they look for, helps you get ahead of that. And just, the best thing a landlord can have on their side is being educated about their responsibilities. Another thing I'm just going to talk about for 2 extra seconds is pest control. Not all places require it, but it is definitely something that is recommended to have routine pest control, just because it just makes it much easier. And a lot of times the pest control company makes reports of activity that they see. And if there's a specific unit that has activity, or maybe the housekeeping habits of that tenant is causing a pest control issue, you can again enforce the lease. You can put the tenant on notice, work with the tenant to address their housekeeping requirements to prevent the exasperation of a pest control issue. So again, having a good lease that is very landlord friendly helps. Being informed about what you're required to do as a landlord also helps. And then being proactive about checking things and trying to fix them before they become big problems is also extremely helpful. If you found this video helpful, you can subscribe to my newsletter. I send every week with helpful tips and information for landlords. You can also check out my property management playlist, where I have a bunch of different videos for landlords and insight and helpful resources in there. And if this was helpful, you can like and subscribe, and then you'll just know every week that there's a video that's intended to help you and it's published. Other than that, thank you.